There are many different types of predators. They stalk their prey, waiting for the perfect opportunity. They strike swiftly with accuracy, then fade back into the shadows like a phantom. They take a life as if it's nothing more than a trophy.
No one has seen 47-year-old Sherrill Levitt, her daughter, 19-year-old Suzie Streeter, or Suzanne's friend, 18-year-old Stacy McCall, for more than 48 hours.
I wish we had solved that case back then, but I pray daily that this case is solved before I leave this world. I won't have to get up to glory to see the girls to find out what happened.
This is Sherrill Levitt. She was 47 at the time of her disappearance and would be 80 years old today. This is Sherrill's daughter, Suzie Streeter. She was 19 when she disappeared, and she would be 52 years old today. This is Suzanne's friend, Stacy McCall. Stacy was 18 when she vanished with the other two women. Today, she would be 51 years old. One of the most mysterious cold cases in Missouri history is the vanishing of these three women, known as the Springfield Three. All three victims disappeared sometime between the evening of June 6th into the early morning hours of June 7th, 1992. We have no witnesses, no clear motive, no trace of where they may be or if any of them are still alive. But if we have learned anything, it's that even the most minute detail can be used to identify a perpetrator and help bring the missing back home. We'll begin this missing persons case with profiles of each of the women. Sherrill Levitt was a hairstylist for New Attitudes Hair Salon and was known to work 12-hour shifts. She managed to amass a list of over 250 clients. The 47-year-old, originally from Bellevue, Washington, had been married twice. Brent Streeter was Sherrill's first husband. The couple married in 1964 and had two children, Bart and Suzanne. Soon after Suzanne was born, Sherrill and Brent divorced in 1973 and never saw each other again. Then in 1980, Sherrill gave marriage a second try with Don Levitt, and they moved from Seattle to Springfield, Missouri. After 8 years together, the couple decided to end their marriage, and once again, Sherrill was on her own. Don moved back to Seattle and eventually remarried. Although his marriage to Sherrill didn't work out, he felt the need to defend her when police stated that the disappearance of the three women had something to do with Sherrill's past. Don said, "She was a law-abiding citizen who wasn't involved with drugs and never broke a law. She wouldn't even go 1 mile over the speed limit." Levitt had been living in an apartment before purchasing her home at 1717 East Delmar Street in April of 1992. She was thrilled to have a home of her own and had recently made some updates, which included installing deadbolt locks on the doors. Sadly, Sherrill only enjoyed her new home for 2 months before the abductions. Next, we have Suzie Streeter, who went by Suzie. Suzie worked as a receptionist at a health club while keeping up with her studies during her senior year. The teen seemed to be struggling with insecurities concerning her appearance, and like many teens, she began to rebel, and her relationship with her mother became rocky. It was during these moments of rebellion that the teen moved out of her mother's home twice. The first time, Suzie moved in with her 17-year-old boyfriend, Mike Kovacs, who resided with his grandmother during the summer of 1991. But by September, she was living again with her mother. Apparently, things between Suzie and Mike had turned sour. She asked Greene County Circuit Court for a restraining order to keep Kovacs away from her. Suzie alleged that Kovacs threatened and harassed her. Kovacs denied the allegations. In early spring of 1992, Suzie decided once again to put some distance between herself and her mother. She now had a new job at a local theater and decided to move in with her older brother, Bart. That arrangement was short-lived too. The two had some sort of disagreement, and Suzie went back to her mother's home on East Delmar. At this point, there now seemed to be a sort of peace between Suzie and her mother, as if the two of them had forged a new understanding of each other. In fact, Suzie had plans of following in her mother's footsteps and would be attending cosmetology school after graduation. The only detail police uncovered about Suzie's life that may have played a part in the disappearances was the fact that she was a recreational or experimental drug user, but nothing hardcore. If there was a link between Suzie's use of drugs and what ultimately happened to the three women, the police were never able to find it. We now move on to Stacy McCall. Stacy worked 4 days a week as the secretary for the Springfield Gymnastics Center. She dated occasionally but didn't have a steady boyfriend. She was popular in school and got very good grades. The 18-year-old was set to attend college in the fall. Stacy's mother, Janice, not only explained who her daughter was, but also gave us insight into her friendship with Suzie Streeter. According to Janice, Stacy and Suzie became friends in elementary school and then drifted apart. It was only in the last semester of their senior year that their friendship picked up again. Janice said that Stacy was a very compassionate girl and felt compelled to lift up Suzie as they each began their lives of adulthood that would take them down different paths. The 18-year-old's mother stated that she was surprised that Stacy chose to stay over that night with Suzie after just rekindling their friendship, a decision that the McCall family would come to regret. Using one of the well-publicized timelines, we'll now go through the critical hours from June 6th through June 7th of 1992, just before the disappearances. June 6th, 6 p.m., Suzie and Stacy had just attended their high school graduation ceremony and grabbed a celebratory bite to eat with their respective parents. The girls then planned to meet up with friend Janelle Kirby to attend a house party in Battlefield at around 7:30 p.m., and then afterwards the two would get a room in Branson overnight. The plan was then to meet up with Janelle once again the next day to attend Whitewater, a popular 13-acre water park where the girls could continue to celebrate their milestone. 7:30 p.m., a cake is delivered to the Levitt home for Suzie that Sherrill had ordered. The cake that read, "Congratulations, Suzie," was later found untouched on the counter. 8 p.m., Suzie shows up late at Kirby's house complaining of a stomachache. 8:30 p.m., Streeter, McCall, and Kirby and her boyfriend Mike Hansen go next door to Brian Joy's house party. While at Joy's house, the girls changed their minds about staying overnight in Branson and asked to sleep at his home. 9:30 p.m., Sherrill Levitt is at home working on a few projects. Friends said that they had spoken with her that evening and that she was in great spirits. 10:30 p.m., a store clerk at the Apco A-Mart claimed that Streeter and McCall came in to make a few purchases. He said he remembered that the two girls arrived in separate cars, and McCall was seen getting into a brown or dark gold Grand Prix. Kirby denied the clerk's claim, saying that neither of her friends left her side at the party. 11:30 p.m., Streeter and McCall and Kirby leave Battlefield and head to another party in Springfield. Almost 100 people were in attendance, and those witnesses claimed that Streeter and McCall were having a good time and nothing seemed amiss. June 7th, 1:50 a.m. Police break up the party in Springfield, and a guest gives the three girls a ride back to Joy's house in Battlefield. Again, Streeter is complaining of stomach pains. Once Streeter and McCall see that many are staying overnight at Joy's house, they decide to change their plans once more. Streeter suggests that she and McCall stay the night at her mother's home. Janelle Kirby's mother overheard their conversation and then watched as the two girls got into their cars and drove away. 2:15 a.m. Levitt arrives at the Apco A-Mart looking for Streeter and McCall. Levitt seemed to be in distress and in a hurry to leave. Police have never been able to explain why Levitt would be frantically looking for her daughter when all she had to do was call the Kirby home in order for her to locate the girls. 4:30 a.m. A full-size General Motors van is seen at a signal station by witnesses just 1 mile from Levitt's home. Police were seeking to speak to the owner of the vehicle. 7:30 a.m. Janelle Kirby is ready to go to Branson, but Streeter and McCall are no-shows. Kirby phones Streeter's house but gets no answer. 12:30 p.m. Kirby and her boyfriend Mike Hansen go over to Streeter's home. The pair immediately find it odd that all three cars are in the driveway, and yet no one answered the phone. The globe on Levitt's front porch light was smashed, and shards of glass lie next to the door. They can hear the dog inside barking. It's clearly agitated. When no one comes to the door, they try the doorknob and find it unlocked. Once inside, Kirby looks for the three women, and then the phone rings. An unidentified male voice begins to say obscene things to her, and she hangs up. The caller immediately calls back and continues with his sexually explicit harassment. Kirby later stated that she remembers Streeter complaining about the calls that began as soon as she moved back in with her mother. Kirby and her boyfriend clean up the glass by the front door and go on to the water park. After several hours of silence from all three women, it became abundantly clear that something terrible had occurred. Janice McCall went to Levitt's home to see if she could find any clue that would lead her to finding her daughter. She checked Levitt's answering machine and listened to his strange message. Unfortunately, the machine failed to save the recording once it had been played. The content of the disturbing message was never released to the public, but police felt that it was most likely related to the calls Kirby had received earlier that day. Janice notified police about her missing daughter and the other two women, but they did nothing. It would take another follow-up call to get them over to Levitt's home. By this time, over 20 concerned family members and friends had been through the house trying to locate their loved ones. With every step they took, with every object they touched, any evidence that may have been there was being destroyed. This, coupled with the fact that it took a day and a half for police to respond to the scene, severely compromised the case.
The department came up and 2 officers came in, and I explained what was going on, and I walked them through the house and explained what was going on there. So the officers said, well, we're going to go outside and discuss this and look around a little bit. When they came back in, they said, we're going to file this as a missing persons case, foul play suspected.
Here is what the police have stated about the condition of the crime scene. Everything in the home appeared to be neat and orderly. The only room in some disarray was Susie's bedroom, but the items strewn about was just typical teen chaos. Susie's TV was on with the volume turned down, and there were no lights on. The clothes that Suzie and Stacy were last seen wearing were found in the bedroom, and it looked as if the bed had been slept in. All 3 purses belonging to the women and McCall's overnight bag filled with clothes, jewelry, and medication were also found in Susie's room. The rumpled bedding in Sherrill's bedroom gave the appearance that she too may have been sleeping before the 3 disappeared. The only thing out of place was a window blind that looked awkwardly bent. Police also noted that Sherrill and Suzie were chain smokers, and packs of their cigarettes had been left behind, along with a family dog that was left for many hours unattended. Officers investigating the disappearances agreed that the victims were most likely asleep when they were awakened between 2:30 and 7:30 a.m. by their abductor. There was no forced entry and no signs of a robbery, which led police to two different theories. One, the perpetrator was a transient who formulated some sort of a ruse to get one of the women to open the door, and then quickly set into motion his plan to abduct them. 2. A person from Sherrill's past who was capable of doing her harm planned the abductions for reasons unknown. So how did police arrive at these theories? The transient theory begins in a parking lot located near the back of Levitt's property. This area was known for partying, sexual activity, and overnight parking. It wasn't uncommon for neighbors living close to Levitt to complain about prowlers. Taking these details into consideration, police could not rule out a possible connection. Then we have the theory of a mystery person from Levitt's past. Levitt didn't talk a lot about her personal life, which led to rumors of unsavory characters that she may have had contact with. Her family vehemently denied any such accusations, including denials from Levitt's ex-husband, who was angered by those trying to smear her reputation. But let's follow this train of thought for a moment and go back to Streeter's original plan to stay overnight in Branson. If the girls had gone through with the plan, it would have left Levitt home alone. Police believe that there was a high probability that Sherrill Levitt was the sole target and the two other young women were collateral damage. Like most investigations, the deeper you dig for clues and motives, the more you unearth some people of interest that shift the possibilities into overdrive. After decades of investigators following leads and questioning those close to the case, this is what we've come to learn about the abductions of the Springfield Three. This composite sketch is an unidentified transient seen near Levitt's home on June 5th through the 7th. Police were looking to question the man or anyone who may have had contact with him. The night clerk at the Apco A-Mart that claimed to have seen all three victims in the store that night seemed credible. Even police stated that they verified many of the young man's details. However, he seemed confused about a few of his recollections, and some of Levitt's family had doubts about his memory of events that night. They insisted that Levitt wouldn't have been out alone in those early morning hours, and if she were really looking for her daughter, she would have made a simple phone call to the Kirby house. Without giving any real explanation, police seemed to distance themselves from the clerk's statements of what he saw that night. Levitt's son, Bart Streeter, became a focus early on when police learned that he had been estranged from the family for the last several months before the abductions. Bart endured a grueling 2.5-hour polygraph before he was finally cleared by police. In February of 2019, Bart, then 54, was arrested in Tennessee for suspicion of public intoxication, disorderly conduct, and attempted false imprisonment. The Streeter family said that although Bart had a long history of abusing alcohol, the media exaggerated the circumstances surrounding the incident, and that it in no way had anything to do with the three missing women, and in fact Bart had always made himself available to those investigating the abductions. A polygraph also cleared Streeter's ex-boyfriend Mike Kovacs. However, Suzie had another former boyfriend, Dustin Rekla, that may have seen her as a liability. Rekla and his friend Michael Clay broke into a mausoleum a few months before the women went missing and stole $30 worth of gold fillings from a skull. Suzie was set to be a witness against Rekla and his two accomplices. Witnesses placed the three men together in Springfield that night, but police stated that the men had alibis, so there was no grounds to question them further. Rekla still remains a person of interest. Another interesting key player in this mystery is Robert Craig Cox. Cox was convicted and sentenced to death in 1988 for the 1978 murder of 19-year-old Sharon Zellers in Orlando, Florida. The Disney clerk was found beaten to death in a sewage pumping station 4 days after going missing. In 1989, the conviction and death sentence was overturned due to lack of evidence. Cox was then returned to California, where he had been serving a sentence for kidnapping and assaulting 2 women. He was eventually paroled and sent back to his hometown of Springfield, Missouri, where he worked with Stacy McCall's father at a car lot. Cox later moved to Texas, where he was convicted of armed robbery and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. While in custody, Cox claimed that the Springfield 3 had been murdered, and he knew where they were buried. Police stated that Cox liked getting attention, so no one ever knew if he had been telling the truth. The last clue that we have in this case is a statement given by an eyewitness. The woman claims that a van like the one in this photo was seen driven by Suzie Streeter at 6:30 a.m. on June 7th. The witness stated that Suzie looked frightened as she took orders from a man shouting from the back seat. Others recalled seeing the same van and hearing screeching tires and women screaming. If eyewitness accounts were accurate, the women could have been taken anywhere by the time police began their search. Despite an extensive 33-year investigation with the assistance of the FBI and other agencies, law enforcement has never had any viable leads concerning a motive for the abductions or where the women may be if they are still alive. Although the case is still officially filed under missing persons, the family of Sherrill Levitt and Suzie Streeter have had them declared legally dead in 1992. Stacy McCall's family remains dedicated in the pursuit to find her and those responsible for her disappearance.
I don't have to know who it is. I just want the answers of where the 3 missing women are.
Yeah.
That's all. I do have a good relationship with God, and I know that in His own time, He'll let me know. It might be long after I've gone. You know, it's His time can be a blink of an eye, and it can be 25 years. So maybe He's only blinked once, and it might take that second blink.
Let's take one more look at the victims. Sherrill Elizabeth Levitt. Sherrill was 47 years old when she went missing and would be 80 years old today. She is 5 feet tall and weighs 110 pounds. She has brown eyes and freckles on her neck and upper chest. When Sherrill went missing, she had short, bleached blonde hair. Suzie Elizabeth Streeter, a.k.a. Suzie. Suzie was 19 years old when she went missing and would be 52 years old today. She is 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighs 102 pounds. She has brown eyes and had straight, bleach blonde shoulder-length hair when she went missing. Suzie has an identifiable 3.5-inch scar on the top of her right forearm. Stacy Kathleen McCall. Stacy was 18 years old when she went missing and would be 51 years old today. She is 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighs 120 pounds. She has blue eyes and had dark blonde hair to the middle of her back with sunlightened ends. Stacy has freckles on her face and a dimple in the middle of her chin. If you have any information about the Springfield 3, please call the Springfield Police Department at 417-864-1810. With your help, we can bring these women home.
If you know anything or think you know anything, call the Springfield Police Department. If in the past you've done that and nobody's contacted you, do it again and again, because one of you, someone, knows something, and we can't. No police department can succeed without your involvement.
Are you obsessed with true crime content? Subscribe now and join our growing community as we analyze and discuss the details of some truly baffling cold cases. Browse our growing library of cold case investigations and immerse yourself in the mysteries that keep us up at night. Subscribe and join the EOJ community today. All it takes is a click.